This is a really topical discussion that impacts all of us. Housing costs have been in the news for years, and anyone who has been impacted by ALS understands the challenges of staying in their home and making it accessible. Today we have a special panel about accessibility housing with two expert guests, Alisa and Kim. They've been working with families for over 25 years, Alisa through ALS United Midatlantic, and with our Scott Mackler Assistive Technology program, which you heard a little bit about earlier today. In addition to her work on technology and accessibility, Alisa shares expertise with ALS organizations across the country, and her advice has benefited thousands of people with ALS over nearly 3 decades. Alisa is joined today by Kim Krauter. Kim is the Senior Vice President of Real Estate Development of HDC Midatlantic, got the word just like us. Kim has over 30 years of experience working on issues surrounding affordable housing and homelessness, and has been a frequent panelist on this topic throughout Pennsylvania. Kim and Alisa share their insights into the intersection of accessibility and housing, and how it can benefit all people with ALS. Take it away.
Thank you. So thank you for being here at the last session. I appreciate it. Kim and I are grateful. As Steve said, I'm Alisa Brownlee. I have had the privilege of working with the ALS community for 29 years, which staggers me. This is a really broad overview on home accessibility. This is about an hour-and-a-half presentation that I've had to narrow down to 20 minutes. And I know you guys don't know me, but I could talk on this all day. So there's a little bit about me, so you know who you're dealing with. I talk about some particular products in this PowerPoint, but I don't have any financial affiliation with anything that I might show you. So when it comes to home adaptations, due to the progressive nature of ALS, most people that are diagnosed will require some kind of home modification within their physical environment. Adapting a living environment to meet the changing needs of ALS will become a necessity as the disease progresses. However, it's important to understand that typical home modifications, like taking down walls and putting in a whole new bathroom, while that's ideal, it's not often appropriate. We are dealing with a progressive disease. And I don't know if the person here, I don't see her, but she came up to me this morning and said they had a quote just to make their bathroom accessible. It was $38,000. Okay, so the cost, the time, the daily upheaval of having structural modifications done to the home, it can be a financial burden and also an emotional burden. There are assistive technology devices that can supplement making a structural change, and that's important to know. The ALS United Midatlantic office has offered virtual assessments for home accessibility since COVID, and so that's 5 years now. Prior to that, I would be on the road, but I've stuck with virtual because I can see more people in a day than I can driving my car around. So accessing a professional that is knowledgeable, not just with home modifications, but understands this disease process. I'm not dinging your local home OT or PT from a home health agency, but they might deal with one ALS case in their whole career. I am now reminded, I look at this only through the lens of ALS. And so we identify the physical barriers and what do you want to do in the house, or what can we help you make your house accessible and safe. You're going to hear me perseverate on the word safe, because safety is utmost importance for the person with ALS and also their caregiver. So that's what these virtual home visits are to do, is talk about modifications, but also talk about safety. So the objectives of the program is that I identify the key safety and independence challenges. I share my screen and offer visual aids on different products. We discuss how incorporating assistive technology in lieu of making structural changes can help you. I do these visits in Zoom, FaceTime, or Google Meet, whatever you're comfortable with. So most often we're talking about egress and ingress, entering and exiting. Bathrooms are always a huge problem, bedrooms, and any other areas that you want me to look at. And we talk about potential obstacles, but again, focus on that word safety, so that we can improve the quality of life, not only for the client with ALS, but also their caregiver. The outcomes of this program have been fantastic, if you ask me. I mean, I'm a little biased here, but that we've helped people modify and support staying in the home. If that's your goal, that's going to be my objective, is to offer you solutions on how to stay in your home. So it's important for people to understand that modifications don't always require structural changes. You'd be surprised the amount of people who come to me and say, well, I've been told I have to do X, Y, Z and make my bathroom ADA accessible. You do not. ADA is only required in a public area, not in your private bedroom or bathroom. So we talk about various assistive technology devices, and in my 8 or 10 years that I've been doing home assessments, the most #1 positive feedback I get is on the use of a bidet. Because people will say, I don't want my caregiver to do intimate care. So we talk about the bidet, but then we talk about, can you use the bidet throughout the duration of the illness? No, but let's talk about how you can. So we address all that. We incorporate cost-effective technology. I understand this is expensive. And if there's a grant that's out there to pay for something, I'm going to tell you about it. Or I'm going to direct you to other nonprofits that I know of that might pay for a particular device that you're looking at. And why is this important? Because look at how much it costs to modify a home. All right? Just a regular stair glide for a straight staircase can be $5,000 to $8,000. Right? And so it just piles on. So when should you schedule a virtual visit? Well, I say as soon as possible. Even if you don't feel that modifications are necessary right now, it helps with future planning. Give you an example, as Steve mentioned that I work with people across the United States. I was working with somebody who was on the New Hampshire border of Canada. And I said, well, what's your goal? Well, we're asking you if we should stay here. I said, okay, tell me about the weather. And he goes, like, it's about 38 degrees below zero in the winter, and they had a driveway that went like this. And I'm like, okay, see, you're not going to get a wheelchair up and down the driveway. So yes, they opted to move. If you live in the ALS Midatlantic region, my services are free. Outside, there is a charge, but if you live within our service area, I'm happy to schedule this for free. And there's a lot of decision making when it comes to modifying your home. I get that. Your home is your pride and joy. It's something you've worked hard for. But the questions you need to ask yourself is the home accessible? Do I make permanent or temporary modifications? And permanent, you'd say, why would you make permanent modifications? Well, if I had somebody with ALS come to me and say, I plan to be in this for the long term, I plan to get trached and vented, and I'm going to live at my home, then I'm going to talk about permanent modifications, because that can be years, double-digit years, versus temporary modifications. And then, are your modifications safe? Can I afford it? The VA is the only funding stream for home modifications. Now, Pennsylvania has managed Medicaid, and out of the 10 managed Medicaid programs, there's one that will pay for a ramp, just one. But they will pay for a ramp, but that's it. They're not going to pay for any bathroom modifications. So your out-of-pocket expenses can be huge. And people ask me, well, if I do this modification, is it going to change my homeowner's homeowner's insurance? Is it going to change the value of my home? Well, what does that mean? Well, say you have 2 bathrooms. One bathroom has a shower, and the other has a small shower. The other has a bathtub. So people say, I want to take out the bathtub, but I'm concerned about the resale value of my house, because nobody with small kids doesn't want a bathtub in their house. So it is something to think about. And the last question is, should I move? That's a decision that's up to you. Kim and I were just chatting recently, just now, about how much of a housing shortage we are experiencing in this country right now. So the majority of people, although they would like to move, they can't afford to move or they can't find a place to move. So I mentioned about the medical decisions about a person with ALS. So what are their financial decisions if they opt to go for the long-term trach vent? And then how much will home care cost? So I have a lot of people who say, well, I'm going to hire home care. Okay, well, how much do you think that costs? $15 an hour? No. Way more than that. So we recommend you make a chart. This is what it's going to cost me to modify my home, and this is what it's going to cost me to hire care. Where do I want to put my assets? And I mentioned this before, but the psychosocial aspect of modifying your home. I've had a lot of people who tell me, you're bringing ALS into my home. And I said, yes, I am, because I want to make your home accessible and safe. So it's important for us to all understand that we're not there to be meanies and tell you, take up your throw rug. I know you love your throw rug. It's a beautiful throw rug, but it's a tripping hazard. But we have to be aware that this is their personal home, and we have to treat it as such. Especially for those that are doing these visits, like myself and others, that the medical field has to understand that we are entering somebody's pride and joy, and we need to treat it as such. So I get a lot of people who say, I don't want to do it, I don't want to make changes, and they're reluctant. I get it. So, as much as you want your home to remain as normal as possible, unfortunately, with this disease, you have to do some changes. Maybe it's just minor changes. Sometimes it's giving major changes, but I get the reluctance, and sometimes it takes a while to move forward and say, okay, I'm ready now for that modification. And we should focus on safety. It is ideal, if you're not utilizing me or someone like me, to then reach out to home care. See if you can get an OT or a PT to come out and evaluate your home for safety. And this will not surprise anybody, but of course, falls are detrimental to everyone, but they're 50% more detrimental to somebody with this disease. So this is what we are trying to prevent. We have studies from the CDC that 70% of the falls that happen in this country happen in the bathroom. And of those that fell, 88% got a head injury. Because it's a small space, you're going to hit your head. Say you're trying to maneuver in the bathroom, and you have a caregiver there. The person with ALS starts to fall. What's going to happen with the caregiver? 90% of times they're going to fall too. So now you have 2 injuries. This is what we're trying to prevent. The most common obstacles we see are narrow doorways, like the one on the left, narrow steps, and of new construction, these architects and contractors, they love to put in curved staircases because look how beautiful that is, but from an accessibility standpoint, not so good. And it's important to understand that not every home can accommodate a ramp. The top is a typical row home down in Center City. And the city of Philadelphia does not let us put a ramp on a public sidewalk. So you cannot ramp those front steps that you see here. The brownstones, same issue. Living on the 2nd floor. So this is what we talk about. What are your options if your home cannot accommodate a ramp? Because your ramps, what this means when you ramp, if you have steps, for every inch of drop on a step, you need 1 foot of ramp. In this country, at the moment, 1 foot of ramp averages $300. Okay? The average step in this country is 7 3/4. I don't know who came up with that, but that's the statistical average. But take 7, okay? Times 3, 21. You need 21 feet of ramp. So we do have a ramping program that will help offset the cost of a ramp. Yes, I'd love to be able to give everyone free ramps, but it's simply not possible. But we do our best to offset the cost. So historically, by 50 to 60%, if not more. When we're talking about stair glides, an interior stair glide for, as I mentioned, for a straight shot can be about $3,000. For a custom, anything with a curve, you can spend upwards of $15,000. Stair glides are permanent. Once you put them in, unless you can find someone who has the exact same set of stairs as you, they're going to stay there. So, and they're also too important to know that you're only sitting in a chair. If you start listing over and you can't hold your trunk upright anymore, your doctors and your therapists are going to tell you to stop using a stair glide. So it is a temporary intervention. Part of our accessibility program, we do help offset the cost of a straight staircase. We cannot do anything with curved because it can't be reused again, but our straight ones can go from home to home. So you can always call me about that, or text or email. And I mentioned the hazards of the bathroom, the 70% fall rate. One of the things I focus a lot on is bathroom safety. And you use a bathroom wheelchair to go in. It's called a rolling shower chair. But you want to transfer in that rolling shower chair in a much larger room and then roll into the bathroom. You don't want to do a transfer in the bathroom because you don't want to fall. Again, going back to that 70% rate. So you want to go in the bathroom on a specialized chair. At night, if you can, try to use a bedside commode, try to use a urinal, try to use an external catheter. Because why? You don't have to get out of bed. You're tired. You're trying to get into the bathroom. You're waking your caregiver up. Try to utilize what we have out there so that you don't have to walk into the bathroom. And ideally, yeah, it's nice to have an open shower. That's the ideal. But $25,000 is the average cost to modify a bathroom in this country. So we can talk about how you can still utilize your tub or your shower with the use of devices, assistive technology devices, instead of modifications. And I'm almost done. I have a few slides just because when we're talking about the home, how do you get out of a home in the event of a fire? Have you thought about it? Have you considered it? So, ideally, it would be great to have a special chair, which you can. These are specialized chairs. But if you don't have that, the tarp on the left, upper left, you wrap your person up with a burrito, like a burrito, and you pull. Is it ideal? No. Does it get out in the event of a fire? Yes, it does. You need to think about how you're going to get out of the house if there's a fire. 29 years here, I've worked with 5 families that have been displaced by fire, and unfortunately, not all of them survived. So it is something to consider because your mobility challenged. So they do make evacuation chairs. You're probably seeing these everywhere now. Airports, schools, they all have emergency evacuation chairs that get a person with a disability out in the event of an emergency. And then I always recommend you have a go bag. A go bag is a bag that sits next to the door wherever you're going to enter and exit, and it has emergency things in it. A copy of your insurance card, your advance directive if you have it, physical numbers of your doctor, a phone charging cord, and promise yourself you're not going to steal it from the go bag. But say you have to call first responders and your loved one's going in an ambulance, they're taking that with them, and maybe in your go bag, if you can't talk, it says, Alisa says yes, no, maybe by doing this. Or I have a feeding tube, don't make me take anything orally. Okay, so that's your go bag. And if you have any questions, you're free to contact me. And then I do have one little thing, I stole this. This was out on our table. This is a wallet card, and you can put it in your wallet, and it says, I may slur my words, and maybe or may not be able to speak, but I understand you. Don't lay me flat, whatever you want. There's a little alphabet board here, and on the back it says, hello, my name is. I also recommend that if you say you're a person with ALS, you're out and about, and you have a pet at home, you write here, my pet is home alone. Because if you fall in the grocery store and they take this out, nobody's going to know that you have a pet at home. Okay? Or even for caregivers to do this, take a card, right? I am a caregiver of a person with ALS. They are home alone. Here, go check on them. Because unfortunately, we did have that happen where somebody, their loved one was shopping, had a cardiac arrest, and the person was at home by themselves and nobody knew. So let's try to prevent that. So these are available from our office. Okay, you're up, Kim.
Okay, so my name's Kim Krauter, and I've been working in housing for the last 30 plus years. I started my career working with seniors, and then kind of transitioned into the affordable housing world. I have over 20 years experience of affordable housing in Pennsylvania, and have done some really interesting different projects that I think you guys are going to like to hear about. I have a lot of operations experience. You don't care about zoning. But I have also, I'm known for being very creative in developing innovative, inexpensive, critical services for seniors and adults with disability to help them age in place with dignity and grace. And I'm a lifetime advocate of people with disabilities. And I'm the president of the board of the Montgomery County Down Syndrome Interest Group, because as it turns out, even though my life's work has been in disabilities, several years ago I also had a son that has a disability, so I have a 16-year-old that has Down syndrome. So I do understand. I come at it from a personal understanding also. So I want to just introduce HDC to you. So HDC is a nonprofit developer of affordable housing. We have about 3,800 apartments in our portfolio on about 72 campuses, and we're in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. We do real estate development, which is my department. We also do property management, and we also are very well known for the services that we provide to our residents. And the core services that we provide to our residents, you can see them listed across the bottom. Predominantly what we're doing is making sure that our residents have access to all community-based resources. So not just the things that are offered within the apartments themselves, but also to other resources outside of our communities. And so I thought what I would do is start by making sure that you know your rights. I know that Alisa talked to us about how to make your own home accessible, and I am going to talk to you today about how to make, if you're choosing to live in a different, in a commercial type building, an apartment building or retirement community or any type of place where you are renting the space. I wanted to make sure that you know what your rights are when you are applying and you're considering moving in, or even after you've moved in. And so there are a lot of barriers to finding affordable housing, and even more barriers to finding accessible affordable housing. And so I'm sure everybody's very aware of the ADA, and I want to make sure that I'm clear that there are some communities that don't follow ADA because they were built prior to when the ADA was enacted. And so, but you do have an opportunity to be able to ask for things and accommodations when you're there to see if there's a way to be able to accommodate whatever your request is. The property management company or the owner will have to at least investigate to see if there are opportunities for them to be able to support you and your needs. And so affordable housing, you often hear the term HUD. There's not that many HUD communities. HUD stopped building new affordable housing quite some time ago. So another word you might hear around affordable housing is tax credits. That's a term that you may hear. And so they're also referred to as low-income housing tax credits, which come through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. However, both types of housing are basically following the same set of rules which come from the HUD handbook. So if we're talking about affordable housing, HUD has a lot to say on the matter. And so just so that you understand that if you're moving into a federally funded community, that be HUD, tax credits, anything like that, at least 5% of the units that are being built must be accessible for people with physical or mobility disabilities. Also, we have other requirements that that basically, if we are not complying with these, the property manager, the owner will suffer severe consequences if we are not able to provide these types of accommodations. So thresholds and single-story units and minimum cleared width for accessible routes inside and hallways, passages, corridors, all wide enough to allow room to maneuver a wheelchair through the unit, plus all the common areas. And so we are all required to do those things. And a term that you may be familiar with or maybe not is a reasonable accommodation. And so what I want to make sure that you know is that you could ask for any accommodation that you need within a unit. So at home, you do have to pay for those things. In a commercial apartment building, retirement community, you can ask for these things. And if you go about it the right way, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and secrets on how to be able to request these things and ensure that your request is processed properly. And so you can request any accommodations that's a change, exception, adjustment to rules or policies, services that may be necessary in order for residents with disabilities to have equal opportunities. Can I ask, with a show of hands, how many people live at home? Okay. And can I ask how many people live in apartments, rental apartments? Okay. And so we also allow emotional support animals. We assign parking spaces. We allow tenants to move to an available accessible unit. One secret I'm going to share with you about affordable housing is that if you request to move into a community that is affordable and you select on your application that you require the use of the accessible features of the apartment, your name is on a much different list. There are large waiting lists for a lot of affordable housing communities, but if you are requiring an accessible apartment and you need the features of that accessible apartment, your name moves much further and much more quickly up the waiting list. And so I want to make sure that I'm clear on that too. There are requirements for landlords, especially landlords that are federally funded, to ensure that if we have accessible apartments, that we are putting folks in those apartments who require those features. If we move a resident into an apartment that has been, that is accessible, that does not require the features, whenever the next unit, whatever that unit is, becomes available, that resident has to move out of that unit, and we must move a person in who requires the features of those apartments. And so requiring the accessibility features in an accessible apartment actually moves you much further up the list and much more quickly. And as I said, there are plenty of opportunities for you to be able to ask for accommodations. At the bottom of the screen, I have a question: what is fair housing? Has anybody in here ever heard of that? Okay, so if you're moving into a commercial apartment building or you're moving into an affordable housing community, we are all beholden to fair housing rules, which require that, which require equity and require that we are not discriminating against someone based on, certainly not based on a disability. And so if you were trying to get a reasonable accommodation, or you were trying to get a policy changed, or you thought I'm trying to think of what some of the things people have asked me for, push buttons to open their door so they can get out independently. Trying to think what some other things are. Lots of tubs out, showers in for some of the older buildings that I've managed, quite a bit of that. But for fair housing, if you feel that you've made a request to a landlord and that landlord has not accommodated your request, and if you ask the right way, you want to make sure you use the term reasonable accommodation. Fair housing can come after the landlord and require that the landlord make the adjustment or change. Especially in the affordable housing world, if you have a HUD building or a tax credit building, that could be a significant finding for a property management company or an owner who is managing those buildings. And so as I go along with the rights, I just want to make sure that you're aware that you actually hold more cards than you probably think you do. And it may not be clear to you because landlords are not required to tell you about these rights. But I wanted to make sure that you were aware that these requirements are out there. And if you just type in fair housing near me, usually in Pennsylvania, the counties all have fair housing offices, and you can be referred to a fair housing office and make a complaint on any type of business, any type of housing community. You can make those complaints. Okay, so now I told you about what your rights are. How do you look for housing? And I'm going to talk specifically right now about the affordable housing piece. And so in Pennsylvania, we have a website called pahousingsearch.com. I took a screen snip of what the page looks like. And so you can see, if you type into Google or whatever your search engine is, pahousingsearch.com, this will come up. And what I would recommend that you do is, you'll see it says find your new home here. What I would recommend that you do is that it says you can search rentals by city, county, or zip code. I would recommend that you go county, because it will give you more options. The smaller the space you give yourself, the less options you'll have. If you type in something a little bit larger, you'll have a lot more options to select from as you look at that. Oops. And I just typed in Montgomery County, and this is just an example of what a listing would look like. And so you can see these are 2 affordable housing communities. They are, one's in Elkins Park, one's in Jenkintown, and it gives you what the rents are. And if you look at the top, it says it's income-based rent. So tax credit and HUD work in 2 different ways. So if you move into a building that's considered a HUD building, that building is subsidized, meaning that the residents that move in only pay 30% of their income, regardless of their income. And so HUD pays the difference between what you pay and what is due to the landlord, and so that's why it's called subsidized. HUD subsidizes your rent. The other opportunity is through the low-income housing tax credits that I mentioned, and in that case, that's probably what we're looking for here in the Mission Green. That's probably a tax credit community, and also based on your income. And it's based on the percentage of income you make relative to the county where you want to live. And so for accessible apartments, excuse me, for accessible apartments, typically residents in accessible apartments pay what would be considered 20% of the area median income, meaning that those residents in those apartments probably pay about $300 a month for those. Yeah. Thank you so much. My water. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Excuse me. And so generally in an accessible apartment, if you qualify, then you would be spending roughly between $200 and $300 a month for that apartment. And so this just gives you an idea. The other thing that this website has that's really nice is this live chat feature. So if you see that there while you're looking, if you have questions, you can click on the live chat, you can ask questions. And in Montgomery County, there's a lot of listings. Not every county has as many listings as Montgomery. Montgomery County has done a good job of trying to get affordable housing built over the last 20 years. I built a good bit of it. And so there are quite a few communities in Montgomery County. Okay, so you figured out where you want to live, and now there's a wait list. So the question is, what do you do? I cannot recommend enough that you fill out an application and you get on the wait list. If it comes up and it's your turn and you decide you don't want to go, don't go. But get your name on the list to start, so that I can't tell you how many people have come in and said, okay, you have a wait list, oh, I can't wait, whatever. And then they come back 2 or 3 years later and they want to apply again, and had they put their name on the list the first time, they would have been eligible, probably would have already moved in. So I cannot recommend enough that if you are looking to move in somewhere and there is a wait list, which does happen quite frequently, that you would consider doing that. I also wanted to talk about 2 buildings that HDC has been working on recently. One building that we just opened in Allentown, it was 1528 West, and it is 46 apartments, and it's a 55-plus community. However, we set aside 25% of those apartments for adults with cognitive disabilities. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I am known for kind of putting unique programs together and creative housing solutions. Providing housing for adults with disabilities is quite difficult, actually, because they don't want one building that accommodates all people with disabilities. They consider that warehousing, and they don't want people with disabilities all located in one spot. So which means that if you're only putting 5% of the units as accessible, it means that you've got to be a little more creative. And so HDC sets aside a certain number of units. In addition to our accessible units, we set aside a certain number of units to be able to accommodate specific populations. Another building that is about 75% complete, I'm expecting that to open in July, is in Lancaster. And that building has 64 apartments, efficiencies, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And in that building, we worked with United Disability Services, UDS, and they partnered with us. They donated quite a bit of money to the project and also a lot of guidance for us. And so what we did is in that building, we made all of our apartments not just visitable, but what's considered a type B unit, meaning that all of our units could be accessible if they need to with very small amount of accommodation. So our vanities in our bathrooms, the box underneath the vanity would just slide out, right? And so a wheelchair could slide underneath. And so same thing with kitchen cabinets, and same things with, there might be 2 eye holes on the doors to look out to see who's coming, one up high and one a little lower to accommodate a person in a wheelchair. Or me, I'm only 4'10", so it could also accommodate if you're not so tall. And so we have lots of features. As I said, we worked with UDS on the design of the building. And so in that particular building, we have, I think, 19 apartments set aside for folks with disabilities in that building. So it's 1-floor living. We do have elevators. It's a 4-story building, but it is 1-floor living, meaning that everything's all on 1 floor. And so our showers are accessible. I had a call right before I got here, making sure the slope of the bathroom floor worked to make sure that the water went into the drain in the center of the floor, because there's 0-degree entry showers, meaning that a wheelchair can slide right in. And so just to bump back to this again, I just can't recommend enough that if you find a place that you think you might like to go, fill out the application and see what's required. And then, if you have the opportunity to submit the application, I cannot recommend that enough. So the steps are, you go through the PA housing locator, you find a place or some places where you think you might like to be, you fill out the application. I will tell you, in affordable housing, there's a considerable amount of paperwork. That we are required to make sure that we understand the income levels of everybody that's living in the buildings. That would allow us to be able to set the rents properly. And so what I would tell you is that if you are super low income, we can accommodate you. And even if you're at the other end of the spectrum, maybe moderate income, we can also accommodate you. So it runs the spectrum, especially in the tax credit buildings. You have opportunities for folks all across the income spectrum there. You probably would, it's not required, but I would recommend that you get a letter from your physician stating that you needed the accessibility features of the accessible apartment. You don't have to give them a diagnosis, but your doctor can write a letter that says that you need it. I would include that with your application to make sure there's no question. You want the architecturally altered apartment, and you have doctor letter with it to prove your point there. There's going to be a wait. There are lots of wait lists. As Alisa was mentioning earlier, we do not have enough affordable housing. We're constantly building. I think HDC, I have about 750 to 1,000 units in development right now. We are trying, but it takes a long time. It's really difficult to get all the financing together to do these communities. They probably cost about $20 to $23 million to build them. And so it takes us a while to be able to get all the funding and resources available to be able to do that. So you may have to wait, but I would recommend that you stay patient, put the application in as early as possible, have some patience, and then I would also follow up on the application. As I mentioned, all landlords are required to provide apartments with accessible features to people who require the features. And I have to tell you, it's a place that landlords struggle, because it is very difficult sometimes for landlords to find people who require the features. So I cannot recommend enough, they really want people who require those accessibility features to be able to move in. And that's the presentation there. I don't know if I have like a half a minute if anybody has any questions.
Do you mind if I do something real
No.
quick? I forgot this. Thank you for talking about the landlord
Yeah.
rental. With our new real estate housing homeowners associations, they do not fall under the ADA. They have every right to tell you you're not allowed to make an accommodation. So if you live in an area that has a homeowners association, do not be surprised if they say no. For the most part, if there's an attached garage, they want you to put a ramp in the garage, but if there's not, they are under no legal obligation to let you build a ramp. The same thing happens if you own your home but don't own the land, which I see a lot of in New Jersey, but I see it more now coming into Pennsylvania too. You would have to get special permission. But again, they're not obligated. So I wanted to make that clear because you brought up the landlord, and I thought I didn't mention HOAs. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Why don't we fall under the ADA? Because the ADA is for public accommodations, and HOAs do not accommodate the public.
Right, they're private.
They're private entities.
Yeah, and they want everything to look the same.
Well, it doesn't matter if you can't live there.
Correct, you're right. But there are two housekeeping questions I ask everyone. Do you own the home? Is there a landlord? And is there an HOA? Because I'm going to target the way I talk to you if the answer is number 2 is yes.